And there it goes. And it looks like we're live, Bill.
All right.
Okay, here we go. I am really excited for today's Ask Me Anything Google Hangout with Bill Macaitis, CMO of Slack. I've been looking forward to this for some time, Bill. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for inviting me. Happy to be here.
Quick question for you. When was the last time you did some webinar or hangout and there wasn't some type of quirkiness on the platform, some sound problems?
Rare. There's a lot of pain in the webinar space.
There's some pain. We're going to get through it. I have high confidence today.
All right.
First perfect broadcast ever. Okay, so let me do a quick introduction on what we're going to do here today. First of all, this is the first time I've done Ask Me Anything format. We've done interviews before, but I like it a lot. We've asked the audience in advance, done a lot of promotion to get a bunch of really interesting, thought-provoking questions. And we have a lot to get through in about an hour. But if you have additional questions, you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, there's an easy way for you to ask them. Just go to our community, and you can post an additional question. If we don't get to it, we can always follow up with blog posts, which we have planned to get those questions answered.
Great.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about how this came to be. Excited about the AMA, but it's not all of our efforts here at Influitive. We're actually joined by a bunch of great companies. I just want to name them quickly. We worked with Marketo, Hootsuite, Vidyard, Uberflip, Lattice Engines, Insightpool, ReadyTalk, InsightView, Visible, Certain, and Optimizely on this particular.
Wow, there you go.
It's quite a consortium. So we got a lot of companies that are exciting companies, innovative companies that are interested in this format as well. I just want to take 1 second to thank you guys for your promotion. We have more than 1,500 people registered for today's broadcast. So that's great. Okay, so a little bit about Bill. Bill Macaitis, unless you guys have been living under a rock or asleep for the last 6 months, you probably heard about Slack and its exciting growth. And that's why I wanted to invite Bill Macaitis to join us. Bill is the CMO. You've been on board for under a year, but you have a really interesting background with Zendesk and some other companies that make us a lot to dive into here. Let's talk a little bit about Slack real quickly. You guys, if you're not familiar with the red-hot instant messaging, enterprise instant messaging tool Slack, you should definitely check it out. Last I heard, by listening to a prior podcast, you said you were adding $1 million in annual recurring revenue every 11 days. That's exciting growth.
Yeah.
We all aspire to. So check out Slack if you haven't in the audience, and we're going to talk a little bit about that growth. And finally, I'll just tell you a little bit about Influitive because we're the primary sponsor of today's event. We are the advocate marketing experts. We believe the growth that Slack is experiencing comes from a number of things happening at once, right? It's a great product experience, which we're going to dive into. It's a great experience with the brands. It's a great experience with customer success and the community that surrounds the product. And when all those things happen at once, it triggers what we call advocacy, right? That's people spreading the good word about their experiences with the product and services. That's the business we're in Influitive. We're an advocate marketing company, and we help companies realize that, powerful word of mouth in the market. Okay, so with that, let's just dive right into it. Again, thanks for joining, Bill. I'm really interested in your career path. I followed you from Zendesk. You talked about customer success and its impact on growth metrics, and now, of course, you're at Slack. Can you just tell me a little bit about your background and how you got to Slack? What was your path?
Yeah, sure. So first off, thanks for everybody for joining. I was a little shocked and humbled that actually 1,500 people signed up for this. I think 1,000 of those accounts may be from my mom. But I really do appreciate everyone joining in. Hopefully we'll make this entertaining and you'll learn something from the scar tissue I've accumulated over the last 20 years in doing online marketing. Yeah, I've always loved marketing. I don't know, it was one of those when I went to college and I just knew that I loved marketing, I loved business. I did a startup right out of college back in '96. It was called Cases Ladder. It was online gaming. There were 4 of us. We were remote all over the US. I was in Chicago. We had someone in Pittsburgh and Seattle and LA. And it was a great experience. It was a bad experience in the standpoint that I had no idea about venture capital funds, and so we did this all on our own money. And we figured out pretty quickly that we needed to stay profitable, which was another thing. We had a 3-tier subscription plan. We grew to about 10 million members. We had advertising. We're working with like 6 ad networks. It was really scrappy, but it was tons of fun. And it was like our first foray into the B2C side and the gaming side. So we sold that. After that, I went to IGN. It was a big gaming publishing company, created a lot of great content, so AskMen, Rotten Tomatoes. We grew that up to about 100 million unique visitors, and then we sold that to News Corp. And then I took over kind of a centralized online marketing role for all of the properties in there. So that was fun because you get to work with like Fox News and Wall Street Journal and MySpace and American Idol and these great brands, right? And it was almost like a little marketing litmus test that I could try all these different tactics and see what worked on the different sites and how we could grow our audience. And I think at its peak we got it up to about 175 million uniques. From there, went over to Salesforce, got a call from the great team over there, and it was just something exciting. I really just, I've always believed in joining companies that you love what you do and you believe in the mission. And back then, Salesforce was still relatively new and young, and I just thought it was completely disrupting. I love disrupting, whether it's in marketing, go-to-market, other places, but here was this, this radically different way of buying business software, of not paying massive, upfront fees, of having the subscription model, of having easy-to-use software that you don't need 6 months of training for. And it was fantastic. I learned a ton there, learned a ton from Mark, learned a ton from all the other great people there. Took a role at Zendesk after that, took the role as a CMO, helped them go through the IPO. Again, learned just a lot about the customer service side and just really the focus and how important that is to create those advocates, to create those evangelists for you on your behalf. And lastly, ended up here at Slack, and I just absolutely love the product. I mean, I don't know about you guys listening in, but I feel like I've wasted 2 years of my life in status update meetings. I feel like I waste every day, like an hour or two trying to triage through spam, emails, all these communications in different places, and like here is just this solution that made my life easier, and I just wanted to help spread the word and get it out to a lot of other companies. So that's kind of a quick snapshot of where I've been.
That's great snapshot, and it sounds like every one of those experiences kind of added on, right? It's like you're building this portfolio of experience. Honestly, I can't even tell you how much I hate those status update meetings. We do a lot of those. So, sorry, struck a chord there, definitely. All right, so honestly, this brings up like one of the first questions we got from the community.
Yep.
Was around this role. So you've had all these different roles in different types of companies. What's the best piece of professional advice that you've gotten over that career path?
That's a great question. The first one I got, I was working at a company, and I remember I used to ask when someone would, leave or they move to a different role or leave the company, we'd always have a last day lunch, and I was pretty young at that point. And I remember asking this guy, I'm like, what's your best piece of advice? And he's like, Bill, it doesn't matter if you're employed or not. He's saying, it matters if you're employable. So the first piece of advice that really resonated was, always be crafting your skill set, always be learning, especially in marketing. God, I mean, everything is out there. You can learn about any of the disciplines, whether it's, SEM, display, retargeting, evangelism, content marketing. There's so much good information out there. It's just waiting to be found, and attend the conferences, attend the webinars, read as much as you can. I just always thought that's an incredible piece of advice.
It is a great piece of advice. It's great. And honestly, in marketing, it's kind of unique in that, you're not constantly getting retrained or recertified, et cetera. It's not this formal mechanism. So it's really important to find peers and to kind of trade war stories as well. Yeah, it's a good piece of advice. I talked with you briefly before today's hangout, and you mentioned that today your role at Slack is sales, marketing, and customer support or service. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of a fun
at the
model.
same time. Why not do all of the roles on the executive team?
We're still a small company. We're growing, and I think it was actually kind of a neat way. We kind of have we trifurcate it, if that's a word. So we have a third of the company focuses on product, a third focuses on the operation side, and the other third we kind of broke it into what are the customer-facing teams. So marketing, our sales, we actually call them accounts, and our customer support, which we call customer experience, which I can definitely go into. But I think the idea was that we can have one point of contact leading all of the customer-facing teams to make sure that everyone has a great interaction and experience through the life cycle.
You got it. It seems to me, again, we talk about this customer experience, right, or the customer journey, and there's so many phrases to describe it, and it goes across all those touch points. So do you feel like marketing at some point needs to be either, not just better integrated, we all know that, but is there going to be one owner for each of those customer touch points? Or do you still see those independent kind of functions?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I've always thought a brand is the sum of every single experience someone has with your company. And I don't know if it necessarily needs to be one leader. You know, it can be split apart. I'm a big believer in team goals and uniting people under one banner, trying to really understand what the right metrics are there. But I think the important thing is really analyzing every one of those interactions. I think a lot of people, especially in Silicon Valley, we get caught up on just the product. It's just the product, you know, and we're disrupting the product and doing something new, and it's all the software. But when you think about it, our areas, marketing, sales, customer support, those are all some of the primary interactions that people are having with your brand. And, you know, I've been a believer, you know, been in this industry for a while, that we've unfortunately pollinated it with a lot of bad experiences. You know, a lot of cold calling, a lot of just doing whatever we can to get someone's phone number and harassing them before they're ready and making them fill out forms and, you know, buying more than they need. And it's just, I'm amazed at how much bad experience have been built into that. But again, then we expect, well, of course they're going to recommend us because our product's great, right? So I really think you just need to focus on the entire life cycle. Think about how you're is really impacting that experience, and hopefully for the better.
That's great. Your answer hints at kind of where I was going with the next set of questions, and it's because I was really looking forward to you presenting. Right, we were put on a conference called Avicamp. Yeah. It didn't come to be in March, but the presentation you provided in advance, like, had me scratching my head and really curious about how you were going to deliver it. Right, so the presentation lists, you know, 10 examples of great customer experience, 10 examples of poor customer experience, and among the poor ones are, as you allude to, such timeless ones as ad sends you to a landing page with no way out except a form, right? Or you pay for seats regardless if you use them or not, a product thing. And my favorite, dry humped over the phone or email by a pushy salesman. Part of the experience, right? Yeah, totally. I was really looking forward to you delivering that. I think we're all guilty of some of these things. Yeah. How does a marketer at a growth-oriented company that's not adding organically that many users per month, right? That's working, like evangelizing, to get their company out there, building a database, building your marketing programs. How do you try and provide the best customer experience and balance that against, I do need to have a form and I do need to collect this data and we do want our salespeople to be aggressive because that's the only way we're going to grow? Yeah. How do you balance that?
It's a really hard one. You know, actually, I think it starts at the top, really. The metrics that every company or executive team uses to gauge the performance of their company really put strong incentives on the individuals beneath them. And I really don't think, you know, there's not bad people. I mean, maybe there's some really bad people, but most people are pretty good-hearted, right? You know, we're not out there like, I want to screw the customer over and I want to, you know, provide them with this horrible experience because we'll get rich. You know, people are trying to do the right thing, but when you are metriced on very short-term metrics, you know, I think the leads, the pipeline, the opportunity, the very traditional, you know, sales-type metrics put a lot of incentive to do bad things to people, you know, and put them in those prison landing cell pages and, you know, start calling them before they're ready. And I think we have seen a revolution in marketing where we're starting to think about certainly what you guys do, which is incredible, advocacy marketing. We're thinking about lifecycle marketing, nurturing, content marketing. A lot of these are really to reach people earlier in the funnel, provide great content, great experience, nurture them through, find the people that really love you, you know, being able to leverage that evangelism, spread the word. You know, even at Slack, though, I mean, one of the reasons I joined was, as great as the product was, one of the first things we did when I got here was I did a, you know, aided and unaided recall study. And even on unaided recall, you know, I think we did 18 to 55 college-educated U.S. Is our sample. We are only at like 1.5%. You know, and that's a huge amount. And this is a company that's grown all through word of mouth. And so I still think there's definitely a role for marketing. We use a lot of very specific hyper-targeting to get us into new segments, new verticals, new geos. And then you hope that that person has a great experience and they're going to recommend others. But there's always going to be a place, whether it be in the hyper advertising, the nurturing, content marketing. PR has been really big for us. Stuart's a great speaker, and a lot of people want to hear a story. And the story of Slack is crazy. I mean, it started off as a game, and it pivoted at the last moment, and it's a really fun story. But I think all those disciplines are really important. But I do think by setting up the right metrics for the teams, very long-term metrics around customer success, NPS, CSAT, you can incentivize those teams to deliver good experiences. And we've really tried to do that for all the different teams here, whether it be accounts, support, or marketing.
You got it. Okay, that's great. So a lot of the stats then are really around this kind of growth of the user, success of the user, how often they're using the product. You talked about referrals and word of mouth. How are you measuring that? And what can the audience take away? I mean, honestly, every company I've ever been to, and most of the marketers I talk to, they all look at like 3 slices of this pie, right? It's like, what does my outbound marketing deliver? What does my inbound marketing deliver? And what does my channel deliver? And they never think about this, what do my customers deliver in terms of revenue? So what's the recommendation on, what does referrals look like to you? How do you measure that? And like, how do you get this word of mouth engine working? Or do you stimulate that yourself,
Definitely. It's a great question, and unfortunately I think a lot of the tools have created very siloed or biased views. They've pitted teams against each other. They pitted sales versus marketing, and I think holistically too, it understates the importance of the entire company. Again, if you believe the brand is the sum of every single experience, then every single person in that company is going to influence that experience. Our head legal guy, well, guess what? He writes the terms of service that every one of our, mid-market enterprise companies have to agree to, and if he's really wrangling them over the rocks on that, they're going to have a bad experience. When they switch over from credit card to invoicing, that's our financing, they're going to have an experience there. When they reach out to support, they're going to have an experience. The first ads they see, that's an experience. The website, the sales team, the product, the trial, everyone is influencing those experiences. And so for us, I mean, what we use when we start thinking about it is, one, we recognize that, hey, everyone impacts growth. It is not just marketing. Everyone in the company influences it. And to the extent that we can continue to harness word of mouth, we have to find the right metrics to track that. I'm a huge, huge believer in NPS, Net Promoter Score. I think most people know it, but how likely are you to recommend a friend or colleague to Slack? Scale of 0 to 10. 9s and 10s are promoters, 1 through 6 are detractors, 7 and 8s are passives. So we actively use that. I've used that here. I use that at Zendesk. And it provides really a North Star for everyone in the company to understand how well we're doing, how many people are actively recommending us. And it's a great gold bar, too, because you think about it, we're not satisfied if someone comes and they just sign up and start using Slack. We're not satisfied if they become a customer. We're not even satisfied if they renew. Like our bar is like, are they going to recommend us? And that's a much higher bar. So NPS has been huge for us. We also use Transactional Csat. So we'll do, after someone finishes with the accounts team, or basically our sales team, when they have questions and after they buy, we'll go out and email that person and be like, hey, did you have a good experience with Matt? Did he answer your questions? Thumbs up, thumbs down. After someone has a support experience with us, we'll reach back out to them and say, hey, did you have a good experience, Nat? So that's Transactional Csat. We're in the process of rolling that out and having it occur at more stages in the life cycle. But I think holistically focusing on NPS and CSAT, those are very long-term metrics. They're very good leading indicators of your long-term growth. Whereas I think leads, visitors, pipeline, ops, those are very short-term metrics, and it'll a lot of times hide lots of business.
Do you find, just while we're on Net Promoter, I want to dig in a little bit there, do you find that the Net Promoter Score trend aligns with the growth in actual referral leads? In other words, is people saying they're likely to recommend the same as they're actually recommending?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like there's been some good research out there. LinkedIn's done some research on active number of people that actually do recommend, and it might be a little bit of a leading indicator because you might start using it and like it, but it might actually take you a little bit longer to recommend. It's not a perfect question, and there's a lot of good research on the holes of NPS, but I like it because it's one question, right? And I don't know about you guys, but again, like experience, who likes filling out a 37-page survey, right? And the only people that do it are your most diehard users, and so you're getting a completely like slanted view of what your user base wants. And NPS, and if you do have the optional question why, you can find out like what are the top 3 reasons people are recommending your company. And I'm still shocked. I talk to a lot of CEOs, and I'm like, hey, do you know the top 3 reasons you're getting recommended? And I don't know, right? Or what are the top 3 reasons you're not getting recommended? Like, why don't they like you, right? And address those and fix those. So I just think it is so much impact. It rallies the entire focuses on the long term, and allows your company to have that steady growth.
Yeah, great. So let's turn a little bit and talk about Slack, about just the company itself, and your product. It's growing so quickly, and you mentioned a couple things that are kind of innovative ways to actually deliver the product. You talked a little bit about a pricing model and a little bit of a different approach on your free trial. Tell us a little bit about that and how is that lending and driving the growth.
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the things, again, that's exciting to me is I love disrupting, and again, the disruption doesn't have to come on the product side, right? Like, we are marketers, and there's a lot of marketers listening here, right? And you can disrupt on the marketing side. You can disrupt on the go-to-market side. And so a couple of things we've done differently here is in traditional SaaS models, you'll have a trial, and it'll only last for X amount of days, and maybe it's on the lowest plan, and then it goes away, right? Or even if you sign up for a free plan, you're very capped, right? Capped on features, capped on the number of users. Even when I was at Zendesk, we only allowed 3 people to be on our free plan. That was kind of the max for the starter. And at Slack, we made a kind of a conscious decision to say, we're going to have a very full-featured free plan, and it's going to be for an unlimited amount of users, and there's no end to it. And that was kind of amazing because it really reduced the friction. It really allowed people to come in and get a good sense and use for it. And we still do have premium features, like you can get unlimited integrations and you can get unlimited access to all your search archives. But for the most part, we made it a really good full functioning feature. So that helped eliminate a lot of the friction. The second thing we did was we came up with a fair billing policy. And this was kind of cool because, again, I'd been used to SaaS where the idea is, and again, because people are comped on, sales and pipeline and MRR and closing deals, of course they're going to try to sell you as many seats as you can. They're going to oversell you on features that they don't have to worry about because once you sign up, they hand you off to the CSM. And, they're going to put you on the most expensive plan. And a lot of times, even with SaaS, sometimes the products roll out, people use it, they don't, maybe there's integrations that need to happen. And a lot of them just fail, and the company's still on the hook paying for it. So if you signed up for 1,000 seats, you're paying for 1,000 seats. And Slack's fair billing policy, which I really liked, was this different idea where you only have to pay if people use the product. And we basically measure daily active users, and I think we have I think it's a 10-day billing window where if someone hasn't been active on our service for 10 days, we'll start giving refunds. And people will see that, like Joe will go on vacation, off to Hawaii or something, and we'll send off a little email with a refund to that person and say, hey, you were credited back this amount. We saw it during the holidays. I was actually impressed and surprised at how many people are able to take a full 2 weeks of vacation without checking into work at all, and bless their hearts. We gave out a lot of refunds at that time too, but it was kind of a different model. And again, it's something Slack's been great too because it surprises and delights people, and that's a nice thing. You're not expecting a refund. You're not expecting like our salespeople aren't commissioned, so you're not expecting someone that doesn't push you hard, or it maybe even says, start slow, don't roll it out to the entire company. It's just we've always believed in that really good experiences and innovating on the pricing model as well.
Is that innovation on things like pricing and free trial? Is that right from the get-go, or did you guys start more traditional? Say, no, we actually, like, in other words, it's not just about trust and getting your customers to trust you, and that reflects the brand, but it was like purposefully like, let's differentiate here and see how that helps in our marketing and our word of mouth. Or was it right from the beginning?
It's interesting, like the values that we hire for people at Slack are kind of atypical. When I was at Salesforce, and I love Salesforce, but it was very like type A driven, everyone was very ambitious, going up the ladder. And here we hire, like, our hiring values are around courtesy and empathy, and if you're nice, and being humane and craftsmanship and finding people that have a sense of purpose and want to flourish. And, so we have a lot of nice people. And I think that was one of those, the fair billing policy, where it was like, what, it just seemed like the right thing to do. And I think the other one we had was we literally had one of our bigger accounts in the beginning was just struggling because they had to figure out how many accounts they were going to buy, how many seats they were going to buy. And he wasn't sure, like, I don't know how much we're going to be hiring in this. And I think at that point we said, well, this is kind of dumb. Like, let's just make it so there's no risk, right? You know, if people don't use it, or if you don't end up hiring that much, you get the credits back. And so part of it just came from that event, but part of it just came from, you know, just doing the right thing.
Got it. Okay, interesting. I do want to talk about, we got like a lot of marketers on the line, so let's talk about marketing and marketing at Slack. Some really interesting stuff. You know, I kind of think of, obviously you've talked a lot about some of the things you're doing, but if you step back and say, oh my gosh, we're adding that many users per month, what is the job of a marketer at a startup company that's actually growing that quickly organically? And there's been some talk about that. There was an article recently that says, you know, we haven't done a great job of talking about the use cases for our product on our website, right? I saw that, which seems to me like, hey, that's their starting point. This is what our product does, the value prop.
Yeah.
Is marketing at Slack different in that you're not evangelizing around specific use cases for your product, and it's much more you're listening to how the audience is using the product and you're exploiting that through marketing? Tell me a little bit about your marketing philosophy at Slack.
Yeah, those are all great questions. So I think first off, again, if you kind of center around just how many people know about Slack, yeah, it's like, I think the fastest growing enterprise SaaS application ever. But it's still, like I said, only 1.5% of the people in the U.S. that's kind of our target market even know about us, right? And I think that, you know, word of mouth is great, but a lot of times too, it goes in areas you're not expecting. You're in countries like Kazakhstan and you know, different areas and different segments that you had no idea you would get into, but you might want to get into Germany, or you might want to get into Japan, or you might want to get into the enterprise, right? And so I think that that's part of marketing's role, is to help get you into new segments, new verticals. And again, we have a lot of the core disciplines. I like to really invest in best-of-breed new disciplines. We've been growing the team out here. The team has been around content marketing, around evangelism and references, around product marketing, the messaging, the positioning, around very advanced hyper-targeting on the advertising side, around nurturing. So we're building those best-in-breed disciplines out, and I think that's, again, a way to get us into new areas, but still at the same time make people have a great experience. So once we see that new market, it will naturally start to grow and recommend. You know, yeah, Cal recently did say something that was pretty funny. He's like, hey, we haven't done a good job explaining who we are. And actually, I agree with him. Like, and that's a nice thing too. Like, at this level, we have a lot of shared team metrics, so we all kind of feel that. I mean, you gotta remember too. Like, this is Stuart who said, you know, Slack is a piece of shit, right? And that he's embarrassed that we're using it. Right?
It's a nice tagline.
It is. But you know, what underlies that is that there is this state of that we can never be content with where we are, and that we need to always continue to improve. And Slack it's a hard one to explain. It took me, you know, a couple months of thinking about it. Most people, it takes a couple sentences, and you know, we finally got it down to a messaging app for Teams, and if I can get it to 2 words, I would say team messaging. So we're getting better at that. We are building a lot more of the onboarding, because it's a different paradigm shift, right? If you've been using email for the last 20 years and you're no longer using email, that's different for a lot of people. You know, and so there's a lot of onboarding we want to do. We want to get better at. We want to help with videos, with explaining what the features are, explaining. It's a very powerful tool too. You can do a lot of cool things, and it saves so many people's times. But the community's done a great job, and that's a nice thing about it too. Though, when you have people that love your product, they're going to write content. And in content marketing, it's not all about just getting one content marketer that you hire to create everything, right? It's them, it's that team, it's everyone at your company, and it's all of your users as well.
So let's talk about that, because you were talking a little bit about content. So I was kind of noticing, you know, I'd taken that kind of the marketing and how you describe the product, and I was curious, all right, so what is your go-to-market strategy and what types of things you do? And I was interested to see that you guys, one of the first things you guys seem to be doing is around this podcast series, right, which is the Slack Variety Pack. So tell me about podcasts, why that medium, that channel, how did you arrive at that as a major marketing initiative?
Yeah, it's I think one, we just kind of talked around. We have a podcast channel within Slack where everyone talks about their favorite podcasts and, you know, what they're listening to. I've got an hour commute. I come in from Marin and battle a little bit of traffic every day, and so, I mean, I'm listening to about 50 different podcasts and all the great different marketing podcasts out there, and of course my Chicago Bulls podcast, and you know, news podcasts, and everything else. And when we started thinking about like what is our target audience for Slack, our use case traditionally is an early adopter will bring it into their organization. They'll bring it into their marketing team, their finance team, their sales team, their dev team, and they usually start with a smaller team out, right? And they are the pinnacle early adopter. They'll share it with their team. The team starts using it and loving it, and then it starts to spread to other teams within that organization. And it's a very bottoms-up model. And again, because it's free, there's no risk. It allows for very bottoms-up. Now lately we get a lot of top-down too. We've had CEOs and CIOs coming to us and saying, I just want to roll this out to everyone in my company. But the early adopter has always been a really important audience for us. And podcasts are one of the few mediums that I think you get a lot of that early adopter audience. It's very different than a lot of the offline mediums that everyone's going to be looking at. Even banner advertising, pretty much everybody's online. But to really get into podcasts, generally you're a little ahead on the technology curve. And so we had sponsored a lot of podcasts, and we continue to do them. We've had a lot of great success with that. And then we kind of got back to it and we said, well, what can we do something different? Like, how can we get back to our customers? And could we create some really fun content around life and work and, a lot of the emotions and the values that we stand for? Inspirational stories, fun stories, stories about the challenges that people go through when they're at work. And, we worked with a great company, Pacific Content, out of Vancouver, and we helped put it together. And so it was a great example of something that we could give back to the users, hopefully find entertaining. If you kind of listen to it, we just launched our first one. There's little best practices and tips on how to use Slack and how to edit your message or how to do the quick switcher. But it was something that kind of set us apart, a little bit different. And again, hopefully provided a good experience. If people have good experiences, they're going to recommend you. So that's everything we're focuses around, just providing those great experiences.
That's great. It's great. I mean, I'm looking forward to checking that out and hearing one of those. You can see we've bet big on these Google Hangouts. That's the medium.
Hey, that works too.
We'll see. It's a little early yet. Another question. You commented in one of those articles where you were talking about marketing at Slack and how you need to build out a team, right? You have aggressive growth goals. You need to build out a team. How do you go about building the team? What does your structure look like? And tell me a little bit about the types of people and the skill sets that you're looking for. And in general, what does the modern marketer skill set look like? Who are you trying to attract? And while you answer that, Bill, I'm going to actually go get my plug and plug in before my computer dies.
All right, that would probably be a good thing. All right, I'll talk about this for a little bit then. So we when I came out at Slack, we only had really maybe one or two marketing people. It basically was starting from ground zero, and so it was an opportunity to really build that team up. And I've always believed in kind of leading edge, best of breed teams, and what are those domain expertises that we really want to establish as our core competencies. And so the biggest things that we're building out are around content marketing, around advertising, around product marketing. And product marketing will handle all the messaging, the positioning, the sales enablement, the positioning. Said positioning twice there. Must be really good. What else do we have? Our PR and our comms, we're going to be building that function up as well. And overall, I think it's just an opportunity to bring in people. I've always find people that are passionate, find people that really love what they do. Again, our core company values are around courtesy and empathy and craftsmanship, so we're always looking at that. We want to find people that just believe in the mission too. I think that's really important. One of the nice things about Slack is there isn't a lot of politics around here. Most people, we share team goals. You don't have a lot of sharks here. So we really look for people that just love what they do and that believe in the mission.
Are you more of a flat structure type CMO guy? Do you believe more of a hierarchy, like when you build that out? Like, what are the primary functions that go into the CMO in your organization?
Yeah, so we have, I have 5 direct reports right now. So I have my leader on the accounts team, my leader on the customer experience team or support team, and then I have a leader on the advertising, the product marketing, and our advertising and marketing ops. Did I say content marketing in there? I think content marketing, yeah. So those are the ones, generally, I don't know, I think best practice is you can have maybe 7 to 8 directs. I like flat organizations, but it's hard to really manage someone beyond that. And again, like I view my role as a manager as empowering them to be successful. It's not really about anything I'm doing, it's my team, right? And so I want to make sure they have as much success as possible. And it's really hard to do career development, give the active feedback if you go beyond 8 people. So right now in marketing, we've got about 10 people. We'll be growing to about 25, and their company right now is about 140.
You got it. You got it. And how about the tools? Again, you have this very organic growth, right? So, God, there's so much talk about the marketing stack out there, right?
Yeah.
The MarTech conference just happened. There's infographics that have more than 2,000 apps. It's like, it's like a kid in a candy store as a digital marketer, right? There's a million things you could do. So, like, which of those tools are essential for you to do the type of marketing you want to do, and which are kind of nice to have?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I was at Zendesk, I was that kid in a candy store. I think I built up a 27-piece marketing tech stack, incredibly sophisticated, everything from lead scoring, attribution, advocacy. I think here at Slack, again, we haven't been here that long as a company, so we're really building out that marketing tech stack. I think some of the core elements, we've got GA. We use Delighted for our NPS surveys. We're rolling out Convertro for our attribution. I think attribution is a really big one. I've always been a strong advocate of that. If you're spending millions of dollars in advertising, you better know what's working and what's not. And the typical out-of-the-box solution on some of the marketing automations of first and last touch, I think, is a very flawed view, especially if you're investing in content marketing, especially if you're investing in a lot of other channels which move people along the funnel, but not necessarily be the first or the last touch there. So I think that's really important. We use Zendesk for customer support. That was already there before me. I didn't even have to lobby for that. We use Salesforce for some of our CRM on the accounts or the sales side. And we'll be rolling out more things, more advocacy tools. You guys have an incredible product. We'll also be thinking about like A/B testing and starting to build that marketing tech stack out. But I think at the same time, you have to be careful. Technology isn't everything. At the end of the day, you have to find out a couple things that you do really well and execute on them, and always just think about that customer experience.
I totally agree with that. It's like, because technology has become so easy to acquire, it becomes sometimes like this false solution. Right? Like, we have a problem. Oh, there's a technology that can solve that, right? But
yeah,
you don't think about how you're going to use the technology.
And there's a tax to that too. It's actually, ironically, it's one of the reasons Slack has been really successful. The biggest reason why people join us is they're communicating with their team in 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, 20 different places, right? And outside just the core communication tools, when we ask people, well, what were you using before Slack? They're like, nothing. And we're like, well, really, like, if you had to send a message to your teammate, how would you do it? And they're like, well, some people use email, and some people use Instant Messenger, and some people use GChat, and some people use Skype, and some people use this. And then all of a sudden you add in all these cloud-based tools, and some people are talking to people in GitHub, and some people are talking to people in Zendesk, and some people are talking in Salesforce, and some people are, in all the marketing tools, right? And so you've got these conversations in 38 different places, and Slack just brings it all into one place, and it just saves people time. They can search on any of those conversations. And so in a weird way, the proliferation of the tools has actually helped us, because our solution brings a little sanity back to just core team communications.
That makes sense. That totally makes sense. One other question, you mentioned Zendesk, right? Zendesk is like a community platform, certainly optimized towards support. You've also mentioned community a couple of times in this conversation, right? So you have millions of users, and it's growing by leaps and bounds, and your product is used in a million different ways by many different types of people. So that creates a lot of challenges, I'm sure, as a marketer. Like, how do I find the next user of Slack? But also, once they become a user, how can you communicate with them in an organized way? And like, how do you reach the entire Slack user base? Like, how do you think about community?
Yeah, I think community is so important. And again, these are the people that love your product. These people are using it every day, and you want to reach out and make sure you have that great dialogue. And I've always thought there's different channels. Every channel it depends on where the user's at. I think a lot of companies maybe overly rely on their blog. Some people are going to go there, but certainly not every single person in your uses your product is checking your blog every day. So you have to think about new ways to do it. Again, like podcasts for us, that was kind of a fun new way to reach out to our audiences and have a conversation. We do go to local conferences. We try to talk to as many customers as we can. We've got Slackbot, which is a way to actually communicate within the product itself, which is kind of a fun, different way to do it. But at the same time, we've always tried to avoid annoying marketing tactics. It's one of the reasons we don't do a lot of retargeting here. It's one of the reasons we don't do, send you just to the prison cell landing page. We want to have those good conversations, but at the same time, we want to be really respectful of people and their time, and we don't want to get too much out in front of them.
You got it. And just again, related to that community, how do you how do you listen to your customers? Like, how do your customers and their chatter and what they're talking about, how does that inform your product direction? Do you have like a, is that through beta program? Is it through customer advisory board? Is it just generally listening to what's happening in the marketplace through all these different channels? How does that happen?
Yeah. We've taken a different approach, I think, than a lot of companies. We've always invested on the customer support side. So we've got probably 5 times as many support people than salespeople. For most SaaS companies, that's going to be the complete opposite ratio. And we've always been, how fast can we get back to people? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just super quick responses, opening as many channels as we can. And support has always been one of the primary conduits for people to suggest features, if they find a bug, really listening to them and having that conversation and dialogue there. The second one is, as we roll out NPS, we just started sending out our first surveys last month. That's a great conduit as well to find out from people, what are the top features that they want? Because that open-ended feedback is incredibly powerful, and it really helps you identify what are the top 5 most requested features. And the cabs are nice, but I find what happens is that you end up getting your biggest customers, and they usually want the triple regression forecasting module that no one else is going to use except them, and you build it, and bless my comrades in sales, but they've never lost the deal on their own merit. It's always because they just missed that one feature, right? We only had that one feature, and before long you have like this massively bloated product. No one can find anything. To me, like, it turns into Photoshop, right? I used to use Photoshop to crop a photo, and now when I go into it, like, I can't even find where the crop is. There's like 17,000 menus and layers, and so I use a simpler tool, right? And that's the evolution of SaaS. It's the life cycle. You always start out small, you move up market, your product becomes complicated and crap, and then people come with a simpler solution. So we're really trying to avoid that. And the nice thing with NPS is you get a much more statistically significant sample. You're going out to everyone, and again, because there's only one question, you kind of have average people that will respond to it. And then you can use, semantic software to kind of go through and mine what are the top features that they're asking for, and you get a better feel too. Like, how are you doing by segment? How are you doing by role? How are you doing by geography? And where can you improve that experience?
That's great. Do you, with a community growing this quickly, do you have a challenge where something so easy to pick up and start using also doesn't get its hooks in the users enough? Like, what happened? Like, it's related to that, bloatware conversation.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah. You want to give enough value through enough functionality where it's sticky, right, but at the same time not become overkill or it's complex.
Yeah, I think we definitely, I wouldn't say struggle with that, but that's an area that we're always thinking about, because Slack is pretty powerful. It's still intuitive and easy to use and get into, but it has a lot of back-end power to it. And I think there's always that balance of making sure that people have an easy path to onboarding. But the bar is really high because, again, like, we're changing people's habits. People have very ingrained in how they communicate with teammates. People are very attached to email for inter-office communication. Again, Slack doesn't replace all email. When people need, like us setting up this meeting, we had to communicate via email. But within companies, Slack a lot of times completely eliminates internal email. But that's a big challenge for someone. And when you're trying to get a team to join you, it's not just one person you have to convince. You have to convince 15 people, a lot of who weren't the ones that originally brought it in. And so we've had to spend a lot of our time on making sure we support every single mobile device, every single iOS, Android, Windows, across the board, so that people just have a seamless experience, having native desktop clients, and making sure that there's enough value there that they're willing to kind of give up what they had in the past. And it's a really big challenge. It's hard to do.
So just a question related to that, because a lot of marketers on the line probably struggle with this. I've seen this a number of times in my career. Nice to have, need to have. When you're a salesperson, that awesome salesperson who never lost a deal on his own, when he goes out and someone says, "What's the ROI of Slack?" How does he answer that, and how did you manage that? Is Slack a nice to have, or is it a need to have? And do you have to justify it on a return or revenue or value or cost reduction? How's that happen?
I think it's all. At the end of the day, for all these software, it's the value you provide, and that value is everything. It's not just, again, the software. It's the experience. It's the support. It's dealing with a single point of contact throughout the entire life cycle. For Slack, for us, it helps in that there's good stats out there. McKinsey Institute has a stat that 47% of people's day is spent going through their email, triaging it, communicating with their teammates, and just searching for information. And when you add meetings on top of that, I literally don't know how anyone gets anything done. It's probably why we're all working till 11 o'clock at night, because we spend all day just doing the email and sitting in meetings, right? Slack's been a little bit easier from that standpoint. Is that when people use it, they really love it. I mean, it saves so much of their time. And yeah, we're going through the studies right now, putting together the ROI cases, and people have saved this much time, and they do this much less email, and they get this, their throughput has improved. And those are great to have. But I think at the end of the day, though, when someone loves it, you all go around on a technology stack, and when people love the tool and they're like, no, we are not losing this one, like that's when you've really differentiated. And at the end of the day, the ROI studies are nice, but come on, I mean, every ROI study you can you can make anything appear to have a 400% increase, right? You get the right analyst group, or you get the right customer that you paid off. So at the end of the day, you got to provide true value.
Yep, totally makes sense. I love that. It is so funny. I mean, you find an ROI stat on every booth when you go to a trade show, right? So the numbers all blur together. They're all over 100%. They're saying something. So that is very true. You've had a lot of different roles in marketing, and as I said, like I learned most of my marketing by observing my peers. Like yes, analysts are interesting and classes are interesting, but it's like I like to see what other people are doing. So can you give me some examples of good marketing that you've seen among your peers? And you can't say Apple. That's the only rule on this one. Can't say Apple.
I'll go with Amazon. Okay. I'm a Prime member, as are I don't know how many dozens of millions of people there are. But it's a great service. I mean, God, it saves me time. Stuff arrives 2 days later. If I have an issue, they get back to me. They back all the products up. I think that's a great, very customer-centric based company. I still love. I learned a ton at Salesforce. Mark is just a genius. And his ability to stay in the news, to always focus on customer success, the positioning, all the time we're constantly repositioning, and I think they do a great job. I think HubSpot's always, content marketing, and I think that's fantastic, really looking through all the different nurturing cycles. But, I think there's so much opportunity, and, we are literally at the tip of the iceberg of the new SaaS companies that are coming out. I'm sure a lot of people listening are a part of those teams, and it's going to completely displace all the legacy vendors. When you look back from mainframe to switch to client server, none of the mainframe companies made it. Like none of them did. And you have these massive tidal shifts right now to mobile, to cloud. You have 3 billion people online now. This isn't like 20 years ago where there were 10 million people, right? You have so much power and ability to make change. And so I'm excited. I mean, I think there's so many great companies out there that are going to be the next leading edge companies, in 5 to 10 years from now.
You've talked about how much the customer experience is marketing at the end of the day, right? That's a brand. That's how people experience. But can we go a step beyond that? Do you feel like the actual products themselves in the SaaS model offer a way to deliver marketing messages? And do you feel like marketers at some point are going to have some development expertise in the marketing department?
I think as much as you can take a step back and just go get out of the functional silos of marketing only does the front end website, marketing or the corporate website, marketing only does leads, marketing only does PR, and you look at it as an overall experience, then yeah, marketing needs to be in a lot of different places, because in a lot of cases you are the primary customer advocate. And if you look at Slack too, the loading messages, when there's fun, there's witty, there's our humor, our brand. We try to infuse that within the product. We released this feature, which is, I shouldn't say a feature. We released this notification where, when you do an at-channel message, some people will overuse the at-channel, I'll say. And so you might have 50 people in a channel, and you might say, hey, at-channel, lunch is here, And you might be waking up people in Japan, and if you have people in a lot of different offices. So we popped up a little message, right? And it says and it's got this picture of a rooster, and it says like, hey, you're about to wake up, It will literally count how many people are not in your time zone. Like 17 people are not in your time zone. Are you sure you want to do this, right? And it just has a little bit of fun to it. And it could have been like a boring message, but we really infuse that personality and brand. And I think that's an opportunity, right? You almost have to choose, like, don't let someone tell you if you're marketing, well, you only are in charge of leads. Like, focus on what you think are the right metrics and evangelize why you think that needs to change, and work with the product teams, embed yourselves into different areas, find out where you can provide the most value, because in a lot of cases they want that help. The poor developer might just not know, like, what's a fun way I could write this up, and they just have to write, a really boring error message or something like that. So I think we can help in a lot of different areas.
That brings up a really good point, because I was actually thinking about the team you're building, and you talked all about the culture, and you're looking for people obviously can think that way.
Yeah.
Do you find that it's kind of what I call is the old over-metricizing of marketing has had an impact, where people don't take the style into consideration as much? Like, everything needs to come down to an A/B test and the conversion rate and everything. You know what I mean? Like, and you're kind of missing the emotional side of marketing, where you just have a little bit more fun, you can get much better results. Is that difficult?
Definitely. It can be crippling, I think. That marketing is great and they can track everything, and it sucks that you can track everything, right? And in some cases, even for us at Slack, when I had some really good conversations with Stuart about what is our brand, and in a lot of ways, like, that's something we have to decide. That's not something that you go off to an A/B test and you say, hey, which message most resonates, or what values do we stand for, right? Like, that's something we have to decide. And a lot of the brand at the same time, there's always going to be qualitative analysis of it and quantitative, but you have to feel good about it. You have to be trying new things. You have to be pushing the envelope. And even think within there, the traditional metrics, a lot of metrics are put on the lead side, but at the same time, like, there are good metrics on the brand side too. Like I said, there's aided, unaided recall, sentiment, share of voice, share of conversation. There's a lot of good ones, and of the two, I think brand tends to be a little bit more long-term. Like I said, I still like more customer-centric NPS CSAT for the ultimate and long-term customer-centric, but brand at least exposes you to new areas that you can build up that long-term brand equity. And that's always going to be a massive differentiator too. So again, I think as marketers, we need to educate the rest of the teams within the organization, the executive staff, about what are the metrics we should be focused on, and what are those impacts on the customer, both the short-term and the long-term.
Yep. I mean, it's funny because I think a lot of your brand-related metrics, those are metrics I've never used in my career. Right? I've always been B2B, and in the spirit, like, career that I've had, talking about brand was a dangerous thing. Right? It's like, focus on demand, revenue.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the brand type metrics that you're looking at right now are somewhat early for most companies that are at the stage Slack is? Is it driven primarily because you're so consumery in kind of the feel of the app and it's growing so quickly? Is this something that more B2B marketers need to start thinking about, is measuring on brand, sentiment, recall, all that stuff?
Yeah, I definitely think any company can. It's easy, guys. Like, look, we came here, we used SurveyMonkey. They've got a great panel. I think it was a couple $1,000, and we're able to reach out to, I think we got 1,300 responses. It was statistically significant, plus or minus 3%. And it was a great read, just to get, a 4 or 5, question survey just on the brand type metrics that we can track and benchmark. So every quarter we do it. We're going to understand the investments that we're making, how is that improving. And I think there's always easy things too. I mean, even on our sign-up survey, we still use the, like, where did you hear about us? It's like the oldest, earliest version, but still it tells us, like, we're getting a lot of people that are mentioned in podcast, right?
You do the drop-down form?
We drop down for them, right? So it is randomized, so you don't get biased there. But I don't know. I think there's lots of good techniques out there. And again, we'll use Convertro for all the multi-channel attribution, and that's good. But I would just say take a step back and think about, between the customer-centric metrics, the NPS and CSAT, the brand metrics, and then the lead type metrics. We track all of those. I'm not saying like we completely ignore them. We know how many leads are coming in and visitors, and we know the funnel and what areas we can improve on. But I think a lot of I don't know why, but in B2B marketing, it seems there's such an old typeset of marketing just as leads, and they get completely caught up on top of funnel. They don't think about people after they've already signed up, their experience when they go through, and it creates a lot of long-term ramifications.
Could not agree more on that. That's for sure. That's why we're in this space called advocacy, right? It's kind of like it's like the Wild West of B2B. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you guys are in a fantastic space. I think that's such the future. is being able to understand who are your advocates, how can you leverage them, how can you give them a voice. For us, that's a really big one. It's like, hey, who are our biggest advocates out there, and how can we get them on a video and to be a reference of ours, and what are the different tools to manage that? And I think that you guys offer a great solution for all the companies as they build that up, and and not just having word of mouth be the random happenstance, but that teams that really focus on it and put the attention and the time and the energy are going to have the most success. So you guys have a great product.
Great. Well, thank you. I mean, literally, I should not say anything else after that. Just end on that. You guys have good. No, but I do want to, before we end, because I know we're pretty much at the top of the hour, and I want to thank you again, Bill. It was a great conversation, very insightful. I think a lot to take away, especially for most of the audience that we attract, again, are B2B, and I think you think very B2C in many ways, and a lot of B2B marketers need to go there, so that was great, really insightful. And I just want to, again, thank our sponsors, and just my guy tells me I need to read every one of them. So again, they are Marketo, Hootsuite, Vidyard, Uberflip, Lattice Engines, Insightful, ReadyTalk, Insight View, Visible, Certain Software, and Optimizely. Thank you so much for helping put on this program and attracting the audience today. Thank you. I hope we can do it again. I'm definitely going to follow up with you because there's a whole bunch more questions that I'd love to get your response on. I know you're psyched about that. So thank you, Bill. Thank you, audience, and we'll do it again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cool. See you guys.